him or face consequences!
Ah! You just created them!
Move him! He's blocking traffic! Brenda Holloway snapped, heels planted at the curb like she owned the asphalt. HOA rules apply here too. I stepped forward as the board chair reached for my son's wheelchair, her voice calm, certain, already victorious. The tires kissed the street. Horns cut the air. I didn't shout. I reached for the dash cam. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. My name is Aaron Whitaker. I've spent years reconstructing crashes that started with smaller mistakes than this. I know what happens when authority pretends physics will obey it. And I knew, standing there, that the enforcer in crimson had crossed a line she couldn't see. My son's chair isn't an obstacle. It's his legs. He's 9, bright-eyed, and brave in ways that humble me daily. The sidewalk outside our home slopes toward a residential street that isn't private, no matter how often the clipboard queen says it is. That slope matters. The camber matters. The speed of passing cars matters. Brenda Holloway didn't ask. The tyrant in heels never does. She said she was clearing the path. She said the HOA had received complaints. She said compliance would keep everyone safe. The words were neat. The act was reckless. The chair rolled an inch too far, and a sedan hissed past, close enough to tug at my shirt. My son froze. I felt the sound in my teeth. Where are you watching from? Neighbors gathered, phones came out. The board chair lifted her chin, satisfied that witnesses meant obedience. She pointed at a laminated badge on a lanyard, hers, and spoke slowly, like to a child. Public nuisance, temporary correction. The officer of rules smiled. I knelt, hands steady, checking my son's brakes, his footrests, the angle of the wheels. He whispered that he was okay. I told him the truth. He was safe now. I didn't tell him why I was calm. I didn't tell him about the camera that had already seen the approach speed, the lane position, the moment the tires crossed paint. He didn't need that weight. Brenda Holloway demanded my name. The board chair demanded my address. The enforcer in crimson demanded compliance. I gave her silence. Silence is data when you know how to read it. This wasn't about a sidewalk. It was about a pattern. Notices taped to doors, fines mailed on letterhead, public shaming at meetings. Today, the clipboard queen escalated from paper to hands, from rule to risk, from civil nuisance to something far worse. A pickup slowed, driver wide-eyed, mouthing an apology that wasn't his to give. Caleb Morris stood a few steps back, keys jangling in his fist, eyes flicking between my son and Brenda Holloway. He knew the accommodation. He'd installed the curb, cut himself. His shoulders sagged as the tyrant in heels waved him off. I stood and placed myself between my child and the street. Step back, I said, not loud, not angry. The board chair laughed. You don't get to order me, she replied. Authority, she believed, was a costume you wore long enough to become skin. I glanced once more at the dashcam. A small red light blinked. That was all. The wind carried the smell of hot brakes. Somewhere, a door slammed. The enforcer in crimson adjusted her jacket and prepared to lecture. She didn't notice the way the crowd's posture changed. She didn't notice Caleb's jaw set. She didn't notice that the story had already been written, frame by frame, in a place rules can't reach. I took my son's hand. We're going home, I said. The board chair opened her mouth to stop us. She never finished the sentence. We crossed the threshold into our house, and the noise fell away. The door closed, and with it the street, the horns, the sudden math of danger. I set my son at the kitchen table, locked the wheels, and poured water with hands that didn't shake. Calm is a skill you practice before you need it. Brenda Holloway didn't leave. Through the front window, I saw the board chair pacing, phone lifted, rehearsing authority. The enforcer in crimson pointed at our address like it was evidence. Neighbors lingered at the edge of lawns, curiosity braided with fear. This was her theater. I checked the dash cam, timestamp clean. Speed data intact, lane markers visible. The near miss wasn't opinion, it was geometry. I saved a copy to the cloud, then another to a drive that never leaves my pocket. Redundancy is mercy. The clipboard queen knocked. Not a polite knock, a summons. I didn't open the door. I spoke through wood and glass, voice even. She announced violations. She announced consequences. She announced that the HOA had jurisdiction. I wrote down each claim, verbatim, because lies hate mirrors. Inside, the house smelled like toast. My son asked if he'd done something wrong. I told him no, and I meant it in every sense. The tyrant in heels thrives on confusion. Clarity starves her. Caleb Morris texted. One line. I saw it. I didn't reply yet. Timing matters. Outside, Brenda Holloway's call connected. I heard her cadence shift, the way it does when someone believes backup is coming. She smiled at the doorbell camera and waved. This neighborhood runs on patterns. Notices first, fines next, then public pressure. The board chair escalates until resistance looks rude. Today she skips steps. That matters. Insurance language is allergic to shortcuts. I opened my laptop at the dining table. Policy summaries loaded fast. Public roadway definitions, pedestrian right-of-way statutes, disability accommodation standards. The HOA handbook sat beside them, thinner than it pretends to be. The enforcer in crimson believes paper outranks pavement. It doesn't. A patrol car rolled by, slow, not stopping. Yet, Brenda Holloway straightened, already practicing her explanation. I watched her reflection in the glass, confident that uniforms would validate her script. I called my son's school counselor and left a message documenting the incident. Documentation is a net. You cast it early. I emailed the HOA management liaison requesting incident logs. I requested preservation of footage from common area cameras. I requested the names of every person who touched my child's chair. Silence, I knew, would answer loudly. The clipboard queen knocked again, harder. I didn't open. I said, "Step away from my door." She laughed, a sound that assumes permission. The tyrant in heels said she'd call the police. I said, "Do what you think you can justify." When the siren chirped once at the corner, my son flinched. I put my hand on his shoulder and counted breaths with him. Outside, the board chair lifted her chin. Inside, I cued the clip. This wasn't retaliation. It was correction. The difference is measurable. I thought about the families who'd watched, memorizing their faces, the way fear teaches attendance. I thought about the maintenance crew, the quiet compromises, the warnings swallowed. I thought about how quickly harm becomes policy when no one stops it. The dashcam kept recording as the patrol car slowed again. Brenda Holloway shifted tactics, voice sharpening, promises turning to threats. I stayed still. Stillness unsettles bullies. The house felt smaller, then steadier. My son squeezed my fingers and asked if the video would help. I told him yes, because truth, when preserved, moves faster than lies. Outside, the enforcer in crimson waited for uniforms. Inside, I waited for accountability. Every second passed tightened the record, aligning time, speed, and intent, until consequences could no longer be postponed by bluster or badges today, right now, here. The patrol car stopped this time. Gravel whispered under tires. A door opened, then another. I watched the reflections bend across our window as uniforms approached. Brenda Holloway pivoted instantly, posture straightening, smile practiced. The board chair thrives on arrivals. I opened the door before she could knock again. Not wide. Enough. The officer closest introduced himself, eyes already scanning the scene. His partner stayed half a step back, reading the street. The enforcer in crimson began talking before anyone asked a question. She always does. She narrated authority. She narrated danger. She narrated my son as an obstruction. The clipboard queen gestured toward the curb like it was a crime scene she owned. I listened without interrupting, cataloging claims the way you catalog debris after impact. Caleb Morris stood near the HOA truck, hands folded in front of him, shoulders rounded. He didn't look at Brenda Holloway. He didn't look at me. He stared at a crack in the asphalt like it might open and swallow him. When the officer asked if there were witnesses, Caleb's jaw tightened. He swallowed. He shifted his weight back, then forward, then back again. His boots scraped once, a nervous rhythm. The tyrant in heels cut in, sharp. He works for us. The possessive landed heavy. Caleb flinched at the word us. His fingers twitched, then stilled. He nodded too fast, then corrected himself with a slower nod, eyes still on the ground. I recognized the posture. I've seen it in deposition rooms when truth waits for permission. The officer turned to me. I gave him the basics. Location, time, near miss. I didn't editorialize. I offered the dash cam. He hesitated, then nodded. Evidence changes gravity. As the video played on my phone, sound low, Caleb's head lifted an inch. The frame showed the wheelchair crossing the curb, the street, the car passing too close. the hand on the handle, Brenda Holloway's heel visible at the edge of frame. The enforcer in crimson leaned in, then pulled back, lips thinning. The officer paused the clip. He asked who moved the chair. Silence stretched. The board chair answered anyway, voice bright, defensive. For safety. The word ricocheted off the walls of the house. Caleb's shoulders sagged. He rubbed his thumb across his knuckle, raw skin catching. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. The clipboard queen shot him a look, sharp as a staple. He stopped. The officer noticed. They always do. He asked Caleb directly. Sir? Caleb's eyes flicked to Brenda Holloway, then to me, then to the wheelchair at the table. He exhaled through his nose, long and shaky. His hands unclasped, then clenched into fists at his sides. He nodded once, slow this time. She shouldn't have touched it, he said, barely above a whisper. Then louder, steadier. The chair. It's not allowed. And that's a public street. The tyrant in heels laughed, brittle. You're mistaken. The board chair stepped closer to him, crowding space. Caleb stepped back without thinking, heel catching on the curb. He steadied himself and didn't look at her again. The officer asked follow-ups. Caleb answered with facts, not feelings. He described the sequence. He described the near miss. He described the accommodation he'd been told to respect. Each sentence cost him something. You could see it in the way his shoulders trembled, then settled, as if he were laying down a heavy pack. Brenda Holloway interrupted, voice rising. The enforcer in crimson accused. The clipboard queen threatened consequences. The officer raised a hand. Ma'am. The single syllable cut through. Inside me, something eased. Not victory. Alignment. The truth had a witness now, and witnesses change outcomes. The officer asked for the HOA's authority over the roadway. The board chair faltered. She gestured. She asserted. She didn't answer. The dashcam kept looping quietly, time and speed repeating until the room understood. Caleb stood still, eyes on the video, breathing measured. He'd crossed the line he feared. On the other side, he looked lighter. Outside, neighbors leaned closer. Inside, the record grew heavier. Brenda Holloway's power shrank by the inch, measured not by outrage, but by evidence and the courage of a man who finally lifted his eyes and spoke. We left the house with the patrol car rolling ahead, lights off but presence loud. Brenda Holloway insisted on a meeting immediately, voice clipped, authority rehearsed. The board chair said the matter would be clarified at the HOA office, as if clarity were a favor she dispensed. I followed because escalation thrives on rooms with minutes. The conference room smelled like toner and lemon wipes. The enforcer in crimson took the center seat, heels aligned, folder squared. The clipboard queen opened with policy language, fast and confident, stacking words to bury the moment that mattered. I let her build the pile. She accused me of obstruction. She accused my son of non-compliance. She accused the street of confusion. The tyrant in heels waved a map that blurred private drives with public lanes. I waited for the mistake. Neighbors filtered in, summoned by text chains that never sleep. Caleb Morris stood near the door, hands folded again, eyes red. He wasn't invited, but maintenance always is when someone needs corroboration. Brenda Holloway glanced at him, then away. I asked a single question. Who authorized physical contact? Silence. The board chair answered with a speech about safety culture. I asked again. The clipboard queen redirected to fines. I asked again. The enforcer in crimson snapped that emergencies require action. I slid my phone across the table. The dashcam paused on the frame everyone feared. The room leaned. Breath tightened. The tyrant in heels reached for the device, then stopped. I didn't explain. Evidence doesn't need narration. Brenda Holloway pivoted to consequences. She threatened assessments, access restrictions, towing. The board chair promised letters. I nodded, writing dates in my notebook. Threats are timelines wearing costumes. The HOA manager cleared his throat. He asked about insurance notification. The clipboard queen cut him off. Too soon, she said. We'll handle it internally. The phrase landed wrong. I watched it land. Caleb shifted. He didn't speak, but his posture changed. Spine straighter, chin level. He met my eyes once, brief, then looked back to the paused frame. The room noticed. I asked about the roadway classification. The enforcer in crimson recited a clause that didn't apply. I asked for the ordinance number. She guessed. The tyrant in heels laughed, brittle again. Laughter is a tell. The manager asked again about carriers. The board chair bristled. This is not insurable, she said, meaning controllable. I wrote that word too. Outside, a car horn sounded. Distant. Inside, the near miss replayed silently, looping consequence. I explained nothing about exposure. I didn't need to. The HOA had already done the math in their faces. Brenda Holloway ended the meeting abruptly. She stood, declared compliance restored, and warned that further disruption would be punished. The enforcer in crimson swept her folder closed like a gavel. As we filed out, the manager lingered. He whispered that the venue's insurer would ask questions. He asked for my card. I gave it to him and said nothing else. In the hallway, Caleb exhaled like someone surfacing. He nodded once. The nod carried weight. The board chair's heels clicked away, fast now. Power hates mirrors. We stepped into daylight with a record, a room full of witnesses, and the quiet understanding that money follows risk, and risk had just learned my address. The parking lot buzzed with phones and whispers. A neighbor filmed the exit. Another asked if her ramp was safe. I said we'd talk soon. The board chair watched from the glass, face set. The enforcer in crimson dialed someone, then stopped. I felt the shift. Not triumph, momentum. When institutions sense cost, behavior changes. Insurance doesn't argue, it calculates. And tonight, the numbers started moving, slow at first, then faster, toward consequences no speech could halt. By morning, letters, calls, and audits would follow, each step narrowing options until accountability became the only remaining path for everyone involved, including Brenda Holloway, tonight. Morning came with a certified envelope and 3 missed calls. I let the calls ring. The envelope mattered more. Inside was a notice drafted in the board chair's voice, formal and cold, announcing an internal safety review and temporary restrictions. Brenda Holloway signed it with a flourish meant to intimidate. I smiled because reviews create records. I drove to the Municipal Services Building where my former colleagues still trusted footnotes over bluster. The lobby hummed with printers and patience. I requested the roadway classification map for our block, not the HOA version, the city's. The clerk raised an eyebrow and slid the file across. Public street, pedestrian right-of-way, clear as paint. At my desk back home, I synchronized the Dashcam's metadata with traffic telemetry. Time stamps aligned. Speed calculations confirmed the near collision within a margin no insurer ignores. I didn't embellish. I labeled frames. Evidence hates adjectives. By noon, the clipboard queen emailed a cease and desist, alleging harassment and misuse of recordings. The enforcer in crimson CC'd everyone. I replied with one sentence requesting the HOA's insurance binder and incident reporting policy. Silence followed, thick and telling. I visited the site. The curb still bore a faint tire mark where a car swerved. Neighbors gathered quietly, measuring the space with their eyes. One asked if her son could still use the ramp. I said yes, and I meant it. Safety expands when fear shrinks. Caleb Morris arrived with a clipboard he kept close to his chest. He pointed to the sidewalk slope, the ADA spec posted by the city, not the HOA. He didn't speak much. He didn't have to. His presence corrected the room. That afternoon, a risk assessor called. Not the HOA's, one assigned by the carrier after a flagged keyword crossed a threshold. The tyrant in heels had triggered it by denying insurability in writing. I scheduled a walkthrough. The assessor asked about witnesses. I named them. Brenda Holloway tried to preempt the call with a glossy newsletter blaming miscommunication. The board chair promised training and urged calm. She never addressed the street. Avoidance is admission-wearing perfume. During the walkthrough, the assessor measured sightlines and distances, photographed signage, and asked about authority boundaries. I answered plainly. The dashcam played once, no sound. The room stiffened. The assessor thanked me and requested the HOA's claims history. Emails multiplied. The enforcer in crimson threatened penalties. I logged them. The clipboard queen requested a private meeting. I declined and offered written correspondence only. Paper trails are patient. By evening, a letter arrived from the carrier reserving rights. Coverage questions, it said. Potential exclusions. The board chair's name appeared 3 times. Names matter when bills arrive. Neighbors began sharing their stories. Warnings on public roads, hands on shoulders, the same tone. Patterns crystallize fast once someone draws a line. Caleb sent a text with a photo of a maintenance memo ordering him to assist enforcement. He asked if that was normal. I told him to keep it. Truth travels light. As night settled, I organized the file. Map, footage, statements, correspondence. No drama, just sequence. Brenda Holloway believed authority could move a wheelchair into traffic. She was wrong. Authority collapses when risk is priced. Tomorrow the numbers would speak louder than heels on tile, and the board chair would learn how quickly certainty melts when insurers start asking who pays. Tonight, I slept knowing momentum favors facts. The carrier's follow-up arrived before breakfast, precise and unemotional. They requested sworn statements, site measurements, and confirmation of roadway jurisdiction. Brenda Holloway responded publicly, loudly, promising cooperation while privately pressing for delay. The board chair thrives on time. Insurers do not. I met the assessor again at the curb, tape stretched, camera clicked, notes filled margins. I explained pedestrian right-of-way statutes and why HOA rules stop at asphalt. The enforcer in crimson hovered at a distance, phone raised, recording her own version. I welcomed it. Competing records sharpened truth. By mid-morning, the clipboard queen convened an emergency session and circulated minutes before the meeting ended. She framed the incident as assistance, not force. Language bends until numbers straighten it. I sent the Dashcam clip with telemetry overlays to the assessor and copied the carrier's loss counsel. Neighbors knocked. One brought cookies, another brought dates of warnings, another brought fear. I logged each account. Patterns reduced denial. Caleb Morris watched from the shade, shoulders tight, eyes flicking between us and the tyrant in heels pacing the sidewalk. He wanted to speak. He didn't yet. The carrier issued a non-binding preliminary assessment. Elevated exposure, potential exclusion, immediate mitigation required. The board chair replied with a pressy memo about community harmony. Harmony doesn't indemnify negligence. I requested the HOA's incident reporting logs for the past year. The enforcer in crimson refused, citing privacy. I cited policy language, allowing disclosure to insurers. Silence followed. Silence is expensive. That afternoon, a passing motorist called me after seeing the notice posted online. He described braking hard, tires chirping, a child's wheel inches from traffic. He agreed to a statement. Another brick, neatly placed. Brenda Holloway attempted a reset, proposing a safety committee, chaired by herself. The clipboard queen suggested temporary authority to manage roadways. I forwarded the proposal to the assessor with a question mark. Authority fantasies evaporate under underwriting. Caleb finally stepped forward at dusk. He handed me a maintenance directive ordering him to clear obstructions, signed by the board chair. His hands shook. I told him the truth travels with receipts. He nodded, relieved. The carrier scheduled a formal review call with the board. I was invited as a factual resource. The tyrant in heels objected. The invitation stood. Insurers invite facts, not moods. During the call, I answered plainly. Public street. Recorded endangerment. Prior warnings. No corrective training. No authority. The assessor summarized exposure ranges. The room went quiet. Numbers have gravity. Afterward, the enforcer in crimson emailed accusations. I archived them. The carrier sent a reservation update expanding concerns and requesting leadership remediation. The board chair's certainty cracked audibly. Night fell with emails still arriving. I organized the file again, adding Caleb's directive and the motorist's statement. Momentum hardened. Tomorrow would force choices. When insurers price risk, someone always pays. Brenda Holloway had gambled with a child's safety. The bill was coming, and it wouldn't accept excuses. Before sleep, I drafted a timeline, minute by minute, aligning emails, footage, and statutes. I rehearsed nothing. Facts don't need rehearsal. Outside, traffic whispered past, a reminder of how close danger had come. I checked the dash cam once more, then powered it down. The next phase would test resolve, not evidence. Boards fracture when money tightens. Allies appear when fear recedes. Caleb would choose soon, so would the neighbors. I set alarms, labeled folders, and closed the laptop. Justice moves quietly at night, assembling itself without spectacle. By morning, the carrier would ask for signatures, and the board chair would face numbers she couldn't posture away. That certainty steadied me, because preparation is protection, and protection is love, and love keeps children safe when rules fail. Voices rise, and power pretends it can push wheels into streets without consequence. Tomorrow, accountability would arrive, measured, documented, unavoidable, and shared for everyone involved, including the board chair and the insurer, who held the pen, finally. Morning brought the review packet, stamped urgent. The carrier wanted sworn clarification from the maintenance supervisor. Caleb Morris met me at the small park entrance, eyes ringed, cap twisting. Brenda Holloway had already texted him twice, reminding him of loyalty. The board chair speaks in reminders when pressure rises. We sat on a bench facing the street where the tires chirped. Caleb watched traffic, then the sidewalk, then my phone recording audio with his consent. He swallowed and began. The enforcer in crimson ordered him to move the chair, he said, to demonstrate compliance. He refused, citing ADA accommodations and public roadway limits. The clipboard queen overrode him and took hold herself. He saw the wheel roll past the curb line. He heard horns. He felt sick. I asked him to slow down. Dates, times, words. He closed his eyes and repeated the directive number, the phrase, clear obstruction, the instruction to document afterward as assistance. The tyrant in heels had practiced the phrasing. Practice leaves fingerprints. Caleb handed me copies from his work tablet, saved off network because he feared deletion, a task ticket, a follow-up message asking why he hesitated, a warning about insubordination. He apologized again and again for freezing. I told him freezing is human. Lying is optional. Across the park, Brenda Holloway arrived unannounced, heels clicking, smile fixed. She waved like nothing was wrong. The board chair asked if we were enjoying the morning. I didn't stop recording. I asked if she'd like to clarify her directive. She stiffened. The enforcer in crimson said private matters belong to the HOA. I said public streets belong to the city. Silence stretched. Caleb stood, his voice steadied. He said he wouldn't sign anything false. He said he'd testify if asked. The clipboard queen's smile cracked. She warned him about his job. I reminded her about retaliation exclusions. The tyrant in heels recalibrated, promising a committee review. Committees are umbrellas for storms that already passed. After she left, Caleb exhaled and signed a sworn statement. We walked it to a notary at the library. Each stamp sounded loud. He texted his spouse. He looked lighter. By noon, the carrier scheduled a second call and added counsel. I forwarded the affidavit, the task ticket, and the audio clip. The assessor replied with a single line. Material confirmation received. Momentum sharpened. Neighbors gathered near my driveway, asking what to do. I told them to write what they saw and felt, then rest. Fear fades when truth circulates. A mother brought lemonade. An older couple squeezed Caleb's shoulder. That afternoon, the board chair circulated a revised narrative blaming miscommunication. The enforcer in crimson announced training. Training after harm reads like admission. The carrier asked for leadership action. The tyrant in heels delayed. At sunset, a courier delivered a letter to the HOA office, copied to me. Reservation escalated. Coverage at risk pending remedial steps, including leadership change. Numbers had found their voice. Caleb called, trembling again, but relieved. He said Brenda Holloway demanded his badge and keys. I told him to go home and wait. Retaliation compounds exposure. Night settled. I organized the file once more, now thick with sworn ink. The reversal was complete. Authority had tried to speak first. Evidence answered last. Tomorrow would test the board's survival instincts. Mine were simple. Protect my child. Protect the street. Let the truth do its work. I slept lightly, replaying measurements and margins, imagining signatures aligning. Dawn would bring another call, another chance for deflection, another invoice-sized consequence. If Brenda Holloway chose defiance, the insurer would choose distance. If the board chair chose repair, premiums might survive. Either way, the street would be safer. I set out clothes, charged devices, and wrote reminders. Accountability doesn't shout. It accumulates, patient, precise, and relentless, until denial runs out of places to hide. Truth always invoices power, and the bill arrives signed. The next morning began with a calendar alert marked risk mitigation. I drove to the municipal traffic office, a place that smells like paper and patience. Brenda Holloway had spent the night emailing apologies without admissions. The board chair's language softened, but the facts stayed sharp. Inside the office, I met the traffic officer who had responded after the near collision. He reviewed my dashcam again, frame by frame. We marked curb lines, lane width, Sight distance. The enforcer in crimson had crossed a boundary she didn't own. The officer nodded and added a supplemental note referencing reckless endangerment thresholds. Not charges yet. Exposure. From there, I visited the insurer's local field office. The clipboard queen had already called them, attempting to reframe. I laid out the chain, written warnings, public shaming, physical interference, near strike, dashcam proof, sworn witness. The assessor typed quietly. Numbers appeared. Severity bands shifted. Deductibles ballooned. The tyrant in heels lost leverage with each keystroke. By midday, the HOA convened an emergency executive session. I wasn't invited. I didn't need to be. Their counsel called instead, asking about settlement appetite. I said safety comes first. Remove the risk source. Rewrite the policy. Protect disabled access. Silence followed. Silence means recalculation. Neighbors canvassed doors with clipboards of their own, not slogans, statements. Times they'd been ordered off sidewalks. Times Brenda Holloway had threatened fines for obstruction. The board chair's pattern emerged. Patterns scare carriers more than incidents. At the community center, I met a city ADA coordinator. We walked the route my son used. He measured slopes, curb ramps, and signage. He photographed the exact spot where the wheelchair had been pushed. He wrote a memo noting jurisdiction, public street, city control. HOA authority ended at the sidewalk seam. The enforcer in crimson had stepped past it. Late afternoon, the insurer requested a remediation plan by close of business. Leadership accountability topped the list. The clipboard queen tried to substitute training and signage. The assessor rejected it. Leadership creates risk. Leadership must change. I forwarded the note to council. As dusk settled, Brenda Holloway appeared at my driveway again. She spoke softly now. The tyrant in heels asked if we could move forward together. I asked if she'd resign. The board chair looked past me, then back, then away. She said the board would decide. I said the carrier already had. A courier arrived with another letter. Notice of conditional non-renewal unless leadership action occurred within 10 days. 10 days is generous. Markets are colder than people. The enforcer in crimson had mistaken presence for power. Power, it turns out, is priced. That night, I organized the community statements and sent them as an appendix. I labeled the file, Street Safety. Words matter. So do labels. The insurer replied with acknowledgement and a request for confirmation of board action. Pressure tightened. Caleb called to say he'd been reinstated pending review. Retaliation paused when money spoke. He thanked me. I thanked him for choosing truth earlier. Courage compounds. Sleep came late. I replayed the dashcam again, not for rage, but for precision. Tomorrow would be the vote. The tyrant in heels would test the room. The board chair would discover how alone authority becomes when risk is priced honestly. I set my alarm early. The morning would require calm. Calm wins hearings. Calm wins markets. Calm keeps children safe. Brenda Holloway had 10 days on paper. In reality, she had hours. When the carrier's clock starts, it doesn't stop for excuses. It stops only when the risk is removed. I closed the file and shut the light. Outside, the street was quiet. Lines were clear. The sidewalk belonged to everyone again, at least for tonight. Tomorrow the numbers would finish what the dashcam began, and the board would learn that safety isn't optional when accountability is ensured. The board meeting was scheduled for 7, but the pressure started hours earlier. My phone buzzed with updates from neighbors who'd never spoken up before. Statements kept coming. Dates. Times. The same name repeated, rotated with titles that tried to soften it. Brenda Holloway. The board chair. The enforcer in crimson. Different labels, same pattern. I arrived early at the community clubhouse, a glass-heavy building designed to look transparent while hiding everything that mattered. The clipboard queen had arranged seating in neat rows, as if order could erase memory. I took a seat near the aisle, close enough to hear breathing change when numbers were mentioned. Before the meeting opened, the HOA attorney pulled me aside. He spoke in careful phrases about cooperation and future harmony. I asked whether the insurer had confirmed coverage continuity. He didn't answer. Silence again. Silence meant the tyrant in heels was losing votes. When the meeting began, Brenda Holloway stood first. Her voice was steady, practiced. She framed the incident as a misunderstanding, a safety correction taken too far. She avoided the word street. She avoided the word disabled. Avoidance is a tell. The enforcer in crimson relied on tone to do what authority no longer could. Then the insurance assessor joined by video. He didn't waste words. He outlined exposure tiers, loss ratios, and the conditional non-renewal clock. He referenced the Dashcam without playing it. Everyone had seen enough. The board chair's shoulders tightened. Numbers don't shout, they corner. A vote was requested to table leadership changes. I raised my hand during public comment. Calm, measured, I described the route my son took. I described the curb seam. I described the moment a passing car's mirror blurred the frame. I didn't accuse, I documented. Documentation changes rooms. Caleb sat in the back, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. When asked if maintenance had authority over public streets, he shook his head. Small motion, big impact. The clipboard queen glanced at him, then away. Retaliation requires leverage. Leverage had evaporated. The attorney asked for a recess. 10 minutes stretched to 20. Whispers traveled faster than facts. I watched the board members check phones, read emails from the carrier, from lenders, from spouses who'd heard premiums might spike. The tyrant in heels had built power on compliance. Compliance collapses when costs surface. When they returned, the motion changed. Temporary leave for the board president pending review. The enforcer in crimson objected. Her voice sharpened. She cited bylaws, decorum, precedent. The assessor interrupted gently to confirm timelines. Coverage decisions would finalize in 48 hours. Leadership uncertainty counted against them. The vote passed, 4-3. Brenda Holloway remained seated as the chair announced the result. The board chair wasn't the chair anymore. Titles slipped. Authority drained quietly, like air from a tire you didn't know was punctured. Afterward, neighbors approached me with relief and fear mixed together. They asked what came next. I said safer routes, clearer lines, and written limits. I said insurance prefers prevention. Prevention is cheaper than regret. Outside, night cooled the pavement. I walked the block with my son, slowly, deliberately. Cars slowed, drivers waved. The street felt different when rules aligned with law. My phone buzzed again. An email from the carrier confirmed provisional reinstatement pending formal removal. The tyrant in heels had hours left, not days. Numbers had spoken. I didn't celebrate. I organized. I drafted a safety proposal and sent it to the interim chair. Ramps, signage, training, boundaries. The board would approve it or face the same clock. As we reached home, I checked the dash cam one more time. Evidence doesn't age. It waits. Tomorrow would bring headlines inside the community, not outside. That was fine. Quiet corrections last longer. I tucked my son in and listened to the neighborhood settle. Somewhere, Brenda Holloway was recalculating. Power hates math, but math always wins. The vote was only the beginning. The real decision would arrive with the policy endorsement, and when it did, the street would belong to safety, not fear. Morning came with a thin fog over the subdivision, the kind that makes familiar lines look uncertain. I drove the route again, slow, measured, letting the dash cam run. This wasn't nostalgia. It was positioning. The board chair had lost the vote, but the enforcer in crimson still had time to maneuver. Time is dangerous when pride is involved. At the municipal traffic office, a beige building with scuffed floors and patient clerks, I met the responding officer from the near collision. He reviewed the footage again, frame by frame, pausing at the curb seam I'd described. He nodded without drama. Paperwork followed. Citations weren't issued. Memos were. Memos move quietly through systems. Systems remember. By noon, the HOA insurer requested a site walkthrough. The clipboard queen insisted on attending, heels clicking as if sound could substitute for authority. She framed the visit as routine. The assessor didn't correct her. He carried a tablet and a calm smile, the kind that means decisions are already priced in. We stood where it happened. The assessor measured sightlines, traffic flow, and curb height. He asked whether the street was public. The tyrant in heels hesitated. Hesitation is an answer. The assessor documented the response and moved on. Numbers don't need apologies. Caleb joined us briefly, pointing out where maintenance ended and the city began. His hands shook, but his words were precise. The board chair glared, then looked away. Retaliation was now a liability. Liability changes behavior. That afternoon, emails began to circulate among residents. A draft safety addendum, proposed signage, training requirements, limits on enforcement beyond private drives. The enforcer in crimson replied, all with objections. Tone sharpened. Words like decorum and order appeared again. Missing were law and safety. I met with the interim chair at a coffee shop off the arterial road. Neutral ground matters. We reviewed the addendum and the insurer's conditions. She asked what would satisfy reinstatement. I said, compliance and clarity. I said, removal finalized. I said, training documented. The tyrant in heels had become a checkbox. By evening, Brenda Holloway requested a private meeting. I declined. Process beats performance. The board chair needed witnesses now, not backrooms. She sent a statement instead, polished and defensive, claiming concern for access and flow. She avoided the word wheelchair. Avoidance keeps telling the truth. The insurer sent a timeline, 48 hours until non-renewal locked, premium adjustments outlined, exclusions listed. The clipboard queen forwarded the message to the board with commentary. Her commentary didn't change the math. At dusk, a contractor installed temporary cones and reflective signs at the corner. Neighbors watched, some nodding, some quiet. Safety is visible when it's finally allowed to be. Cars slowed. Horns didn't blare. I walked the block with my son again. This time, the path was clear. The street felt narrower, not because it had changed, but because attention had. Attention saves lives. Late that night, the board scheduled an emergency session. Agenda attached. Leadership resolution first. Safety policy second. Insurance compliance third. Order matters when clocks are ticking. I checked the Dashcam one last time and archived the file with timestamps and backups. Evidence should be board, not dramatic. Board evidence survives appeals. As I shut the garage, my phone buzzed. A message from the assessor. Provisional approval pending vote confirmation. The enforcer in crimson was running out of space. Tomorrow wouldn't be loud. It would be formal. Votes would be cast. Titles would change. The street would remain a street, and the tyrant in heels would learn that authority borrowed from fear dissolves when confronted by light, lines, and limits. The community room filled before sunset, folding chairs scraping, voices layered with nerves and curiosity. I stood near the back with my son, cones still visible through the glass doors outside. The board chair took the dais, chin high, crimson jacket immaculate. Brenda Holloway smiled, like control was a habit. The agenda opened with safety updates. The clipboard queen tried to steer. Residents interrupted. A mother described horns. A retiree mentioned sightlines. The enforcer in crimson tapped her pen, reminding everyone of order. Order didn't quiet fear. When public comment began, I rolled forward. The room shifted. Phones lifted. The tyrant in heels watched me approach the microphone, eyes calculating. I stated my name and credentials briefly, then asked to play a clip. Murmurs rose. The board chair hesitated. The interim chair nodded. The video ran. Tires hissed. A horn blared. A wheelchair crossed white paint into moving traffic. The room froze. Someone gasped. Brenda Holloway reached for her pen and stopped. Evidence doesn't argue. I spoke calmly, describing curb seams, right-of-way, and accommodation duties. I explained how public roadway authority differs from private rules. I didn't accuse. I connected dots. The clipboard queen tried to interrupt. The interim chair cut her off. Caleb stood next, shoulders tight, hands clenched. He confirmed maintenance limits and where city jurisdiction began. His voice shook, then steadied. The enforcer in crimson stared at the floor. Retaliation had witnesses now. The insurer's assessor addressed the room. He outlined exposure, exclusions, and timelines. He said non-renewal plainly. Numbers landed heavier than words. A hush followed. Brenda Holloway requested a rebuttal. She spoke of safety and flow, of intent. She avoided the word disabled again. A neighbor asked why hands were used. Silence answered. The tyrant in heels adjusted her jacket. A motion was introduced to finalize removal. The board chair protested procedure. The interim chair cited bylaws. Votes were called. Hands rose, counted, confirmed. The enforcer in crimson lost her title without a sound. Applause didn't erupt. Relief did. People exhaled. The assessor collected signatures. Conditions were read into record. Training mandated. Enforcement boundaries codified. Dashcam footage referenced as exhibit, archived. I answered questions from the floor. Parents asked about routes. Seniors asked about crossings. The traffic officer explained signage and patrol adjustments. The room felt different, steadier. As the meeting adjourned, Brenda Holloway stood alone, papers gathered too neatly. She avoided my eyes. Authority had left the room before she did. Outside, headlights slowed at the corner. Cones reflected amber. My son rolled forward, unafraid. Neighbors nodded. Justice hadn't shouted. It had voted. I stayed until the chairs were stacked. Process matters to the end. Tomorrow, letters would go out. Tonight, the street belonged to everyone again. I paused by the doorway, listening to the quiet after conflict. The interim chair thanked residents and promised transparency. The traffic officer shared a timeline for paint and signage. The assessor reminded everyone that compliance keeps coverage alive. A few neighbors approached me with stories they'd kept small for years. I listened, taking notes, offering process, not promises. Accountability grows when it's shared. Brenda Holloway exited last, heels echoing, power gone, but posture intact. The enforcer in crimson glanced once at the cones and looked away. Consequences had edges now. When we left, the sky had cleared. Streetlights washed the asphalt evenly. My son laughed at the glow, wheels humming safely. The path home was simple, and that simplicity felt earned. I locked the car and took one last look back. Nothing dramatic remained, only markings and rules respected. That was enough. Tomorrow would bring paperwork and patience. Tonight brought sleep. For us, and for a neighborhood, learning that safety is not negotiable. It starts with lines, ends with lives, and holds when people choose law over fear, care over control, and courage over convenience. That lesson stayed with everyone present after the vote. Morning came quieter than it used to. The street outside our house sounded different, not because traffic vanished, but because predictability returned. I rolled my son toward the window and watched cars slow where cones had been replaced by fresh paint. Lines mattered again. The board chair resigned before noon. The email was short, careful, and final. Brenda Holloway thanked the community for the opportunity to serve. No apology, no admission. The tyrant in heels never offered those. Consequences don't require them. Insurance followed with a notice that felt heavier than any gavel. Coverage would continue under strict conditions, training, oversight, zero tolerance for physical enforcement. The clipboard queen's methods were now liabilities on paper, not habits in practice. Neighbors began stopping by. Some brought coffee, some brought stories they'd swallowed for years. A grandmother described being blocked with a clipboard. A veteran described fines stacked like warnings. Each account sounded small alone. Together, they explained why fear had lived here. Caleb visited last. He stood in the doorway, eyes clearer than before. He thanked us for not turning him into a villain. He said the maintenance team finally had boundaries written down. He said work felt safer. I believed him. The city installed signage by the corner that afternoon. A traffic officer measured distances while kids watched. My son asked why paint takes so long to dry. I told him it's because permanence deserves patience. The enforcer in crimson didn't return to meetings. An interim committee formed with open seats and posted minutes. Transparency felt awkward at first, like a muscle unused. It strengthened quickly. I replayed the Dashcam once, then archived it. Proof serves its purpose and then rests. Justice doesn't need reruns. At dusk, the street glowed evenly. Wheels rolled, strollers passed. No one flinched. Safety wasn't loud, it was present. I thought about how authority collapses when it forgets people. Brenda Holloway believed rules were shields, they're mirrors. They show intent when tested. We didn't win by shouting. We won by letting systems see themselves clearly. Liability, coverage, jurisdiction. These are dry words until a child is inches from harm. Then, they're lifelines. Before bed, my son asked if the lady would come back. I told him the rules are different now. He nodded, trusting lines more than promises. I wrote letters to the city and insurer, thanking them for acting. Gratitude matters when accountability works. It encourages repetition. As lights went out, I felt the strange calm that follows a long vigilance. Not relief alone, assurance, the kind that lets you sleep without listening for horns. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. The board chair's chapter closed quietly. The enforcer in crimson became a cautionary line in minutes. The clipboard queen's reign ended with ink, not spectacle. Our neighborhood learned that safety is a shared responsibility, not a costume someone wears to intimidate. We learned that evidence protects the vulnerable when voices are ignored. We learned that financial pressure can do what arguments can't. Tomorrow, committees will meet, training will happen, policies will be boring. That's the goal. Boring means safe. I tucked my son in and kissed his forehead, grateful for an ordinary ending. Ordinary is precious when you've stared at asphalt and heard horns. Outside, the street slept under new lines. Inside, we did too. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums, steady as wheels on smooth paint, carrying families forward without fear. That's how this ends. Not with a shout, but with a boundary honored, a child protected, and a community awake enough to keep it that way.